I either need to take this website down and move and never speak of this again, or I need to make this the most amazing, thing that ever happened. I had two options then. And from that moment, I never looked back. And it was just nothing but every single day of my life was what can I do to make this thing bigger? What can I do to make this thing better?
That was a clip from today's guest, Joanna Angel. Joanna is a writer, actress, and director based in New York. She founded the website Burning Angel, which is credited for paving the way for the alt porn genre, making it financially viable. She is now an ambassador for Liquid Death. This was a great conversation, and Joanna, thank you so much for joining us. Now, before we get into it, everyone, please rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. My name is Aram Arslanian, and this is One Step Beyond. All right, everyone, welcome back. Today we have a guest that I'm super psyched to have here, Joanna Angel. Joanna,
Hi.
welcome.
Hello. Hi. How are you doing? Thank you.
Good. We are here in New York, where you're not native to New York, but the New York State. Is that right?
Oh, my big dirty secret that I always hesitate to tell people. I grew up in New Jersey. I grew up in New Jersey. Mm-hmm. I spent a lot of my childhood, I lived very, very close to New York City, right over the George Washington Bridge in Bergen County, which probably doesn't mean anything to you because why would you know anything about New Jersey? And then I actually, I came into the city all the time. I went to shows here, every weekend I would just take the bus and I don't know, do whatever a high school person could actually do in the city. And then I went to Rutgers University in New Brunswick, which is also in New Jersey, but that's more central Jersey. And I still spent a fair amount of time in the city, but I guess I was very in the New Brunswick scene at that time. And then after college, I moved to Brooklyn. So then finally, for the first time, after telling everyone I ever met I was from New York, not really being from New York, I finally actually lived in New York.
I'm not this might surprise you. I spent a lot of time in New Jersey.
Really?
I have love for
New Jersey is awesome. New Jersey's awesome.
I was just in New Jersey. Well, I was in New Jersey last night because I flew into New York, but I was just in Jersey recently. We were playing a show in Asbury Park.
Oh, yeah. I went to shows in Asbury all the time growing up. But so then I lived in Brooklyn, and then I moved to LA. So technically, when I moved to LA, the place I lived before LA was Brooklyn. So when people would say, "Oh, where are you from?" I would say Brooklyn because it was the place I lived before that.
Well,
so then everyone would be like, "You're from Brooklyn," and I'm like, "Well," but anyway, now I live in Brooklyn again.
If we're gonna get real technical, then Brooklyn has been the place that you've lived in the least amount of time.
You know what? I guess I got to come clean on we're being honest here. I guess so. But Brooklyn is where I feel at home. Okay. And that is where I live now. I am never leaving now.
This podcast is about hard truth.
Yes.
Hard truth.
Yes. I moved there and then got taken away by the porn industry to Los Angeles. And now I'm back. And I'm never leaving. I'm going to live in Brooklyn for the rest of my life because I missed it the entire time. And something about it really feels like home. But no, I'm not from Brooklyn. And people who are actually born and raised in Brooklyn have a real strong tie to it. And I feel horrible when people try to relate with me on it because I think on my Wikipedia page it says from Brooklyn. And so all these Brooklyn people will be like, "Yeah, from Brooklyn." I'm from the suburbs of New Jersey.
Listen, you got to live your life. You got to live. Okay.
Anyway, so that answers that question.
Well, let's get into it. For the uninitiated, we're going to start with what is theoretically a simple question, but it's also a super hard question. You can go anywhere you want. Who are you and what do you do?
Oh, God. I'm Joanna Angel. I'm a brand ambassador, lifestyle marketing, something or other, for Liquid Death. That is what I do. I also do a number of other things, but I suppose that's my main thing right now. I suppose I'm more known for being a, as I called it, a porntrepreneur in the adult film industry, where I just spent the last 20 years. And I am still very much part of the adult industry, just not in the same way I was before. Part of being on the brand ambassador team at Liquid Death is they take well-known people in a bunch of different industries and have them work for the brand. So anyway, I still have, I guess I didn't really, I'm Joanna Angel. I was a director and producer in the porn industry, and I owned my own studio called Burning Angel for 20 years. And now I am currently a brand ambassador or marketing something or other, professional thirst murderer for Liquid Death.
You left something out that I'm super interested in hearing about, and maybe you left it on purpose. You're an author and a writer.
I am an author and a writer. And actually, my current writing gig, no matter what I do, I always like to still be a writer, no matter what. That really has always been my passion in life. So right now, I am like a freelance staff writer for Loudwire, Loudwire Online, Loudwire Magazine. Do they still call it Loudwire Magazine if it's only online? Whatever. For Loudwire, the number one heavy metal website, which is really just a fun thing for me. I guess why I left that out. I mean, yeah, I'm a published author, but I'm not like currently like working on another book. So I guess you asked me, like, I was trying to answer like what I do right now. But yes,
let's talk about being an author.
Actress, porntrepreneur, adult film star, best-selling author, thirst murderer is what's in my bio.
I really like the thirst. For anyone who doesn't know about Liquid Death, that is like part of their branding. But also, I just like the idea that maybe someone wouldn't know that, and they'd be like, God, this person hates thirst.
Yeah, this person hates thirst.
Murder.
And suddenly I'm arrested for being a murderer.
I know. Well,
you're under arrest for the murdering of thirst.
It's weird. Like, Liquid Death entered my life this is, by the way, not a Liquid Death ad, but Sticks. Word up. We love you. You're an awesome person.
Everything's a Liquid Death ad when you work on the brand ambassador team. So
well played. Well played. It's funny though, like Spencer, who you've met, and for anyone who who doesn't know, Spencer is a producer for our podcast. This cat is like the most into being hydrated out of anyone I've ever met. He's like constantly got like a wall of beverages behind him. I first heard about Liquid Death from him, and it's like, it has somehow become a part of my life, this Liquid Death thing. But I'm stoked because it's cool. I love Sticks. I think it's a cool company.
And water's very important.
You know, water is all right. I feel good about water.
Yeah.
But let's go back to you.
Okay.
You end with being an author, and correct me if I'm wrong, writing and producing like creative content is actually your first love. And it's what I believe you were first interested in doing before you ever became a business leader. Is that correct? Yeah.
I mean, I guess my blessing and my curse. I mean, I've always been a creative person, and being a writer was always my passion. Like anybody who knew me, like if you asked any of my friends that I grew up with, they were like, "Oh, Joanna wants to be a writer." Yeah. That was like what I wanted to be when I grew up. I took a lot of like, even after school, even in high school, I would like take. Like I said, I spent a lot of time in New York City growing up. I took like these writing classes after school. When I was in high school, I would like take the bus into like New York City and take these like weird writing classes that I found like ads for, just like posted on like a telephone pole. Even in college, I mean, my major was English, but within my major, I had a concentration of creative writing, and like for fun, I would take extra writing classes on top of that. Just like, writing workshops. I did like I don't know, open mic nights and embarrassing things like that when I was like really into poetry. I had like a little writing like zine for a hot minute. I think most of my life I was writing things and trying to get people to care about it, and nobody cared about it. It was always like, I was always, being in the punk scene, like I would be like envious because like if your passion and your skill was like playing music, you could be like, hey man, do you want to hear my new song? And anyone will listen to your song, But if you're like, do you want to read my new short story? Like it's real weird, And I actually remember in high school, I tried. I was like, I do not want to be a writer. I want to be a musician that expresses themselves through music because that's much cooler than being a writer. And I took guitar lessons. And I was like really in my head, imagined myself being this like badass chick that like wrote songs when they were in a bad mood. And I was so bad at it. And I was I wanted to be good at it so badly. And I was not good at it. Even my guitar teacher was like, I don't know if this is for you.
So the person who gets paid money to teach you is like, no,
she was like, I don't know if this is your thing, But always the lyrics to the songs that I was writing, I was spending more time on than the chord progressions and the melodies, Yeah. So anyway, my passion was always writing.
So writing, was it always a constant? So even as you were building your business and kind of like starting off your career, did you always stay writing or did it ever fall into the background?
No, I never let it fall into the background. I don't think I could let it. A lot of people thought it did. I don't think most people realized because, after a certain amount of time, after the business sort of fell into place and found itself, I spent a lot of time working on the scripts, which people like to laugh at me when you say that, this is a script for a porn.
Is that your idiot voice?
That's my voice of everyone who says the same comment whenever I'd post like, working on a script right now. There's a script in porn. So, but they really, I put my heart and soul into all those scripts. And unlike Hollywood, porn is a quantity game more than it is a quality game. So you can't just be like a writer in Hollywood where you write one feature film and it's good for many, many years.
Yeah.
You work on one project for a year straight. You have to write it. I mean, I don't work in Hollywood from what I know. You have a very long time to do one thing and that one thing lives forever. Like in porn, you've got a couple weeks to finish something. And then as soon as that project's done, you have to start the next one and start the next one, start the next one. So, and then in addition to that, so constantly working on a new script, which was a very big part of writing. And then even from the beginning, I would always kind of put it out there. I did a lot of like guest columnist writing for, sex magazines. There was like a hot minute where I had a column for Spin magazine doing like a sex column. I loved it. And I was like really upset when it ended because the guy who hired me wound up getting like fired. He told me he left on his own, but I think he got fired. But whatever. The person whose idea it was for me to work there did no longer work there. And then I got let go. Way back. This is a very long time ago. I always kind of just, kept my foot in the writing world, so it never fell to the wayside, but it also never became my like real job. And that's okay. Yeah. It's very hard. It was always my dream to be creative for a living. And then when you actually become creative for a living, it's very stressful, so I think I was just so like knee deep in like my ideas and my writing kind of being the focal point of my world and writing 2 books. Like it's almost like I think I got that out of my system, and it's actually very relaxing now to have a job where I'm not like stressed about not having ideas, because when you're the idea person and you don't have an idea, like there's really not much you can do. So
totally.
If that answers your question.
It totally answers my question. So tell us about your 2 books.
My 2 books. So I wrote 2 books. They are choose your own adventure erotic novels. So they were very challenging to do. When I was, it was the publisher's idea, that when I first, I wrote a chapter for another adult film star, Asa Akira. She's like a very close friend of mine and a legend. She had written a few books. I think at the time she had 1 published. But anyway, she was also working on this, like, what do you call it? Like a collaboration, like where she had a book where a lot of different adult film stars submitted a chapter to the book. And I knew that was kind of my, like, I'm like, this is like the moment I've been waiting for, because I have a feeling like if I can really kill it in this chapter, because, everybody else was submitting their pieces in there, but I was like hoping that my piece could stand out and the publisher would maybe like notice me. So I submitted a chapter to, it was called Asa Erotica, just a cute name, play off her name. Anyway, I submitted a chapter in there, and Asa also knew that I really wanted to write a book. Like, it was actually starting to like drive me crazy. Like, I was like, when am I going to write a book? And I tried going the route of like putting together, samples and sending it to agents. And of course, nobody got back to me. And then if people did get back to me, they very much wanted me to write a book about my life in the porn industry, which I didn't want to do. Because I would tell them, not for any particular reason. I was very much in the middle of my journey then. I'm like, there's no end to my story right now, and I don't know. I didn't want to write a biography, I wanted to write fiction. And then, so I wrote my piece for that. The public, I kind of annoyed Asa, where I was like, tell them I really want to write a book, and then, so between them really liking my piece and her kind of helping me, they did get in touch with me, and they asked if I wanted to write a book. And so I said, yes. And then the next week when I was in my meeting, they gave me this idea of choose your own erotica. And I actually really was like, I was very stressed and not into the idea at all. I was like, this is not at all what I thought was going to, and I came to the meeting with so many ideas of my own. And then they were basically like, no, we want you to do this. And I was like, of course, in my head, I was like, no, but I was like, yes. I mean, I wasn't going to turn it, it was my dream to get a book deal. So I was like, yeah, I'm going to do this. So there, but now I became like in love with it as I did it. And actually, I really loved the second one. I felt like the first one, I still was like not really sure of what I was doing. Although I'm very proud of the book, but the second one, I was like, I really like know and understand this format now, and I really like embraced it and had a little more fun with it. But the first book is called Night Shift, and it's about a girl that works overnight at a little sex shop in Florida. And then the second book is called Club 42, and it's about a girl that works at a strip club on 42nd Street in New York. It's really crazy because I spent like 6 months or so writing, like a very in-depth 6 months where I like wrote every single day. So it's very strange when you write a book. It's like it takes up your whole life, but like it's not like being a musician where you're in the studio and you can post photos from it and you can like very vocally or an actress who's working on a movie. It's very easy for the public to understand, like, oh, she's like in Paris working on a film. And you can like, if you see little bits and pieces of what's going on set, it's exciting. But I just feel like in a coffee shop writing. And then it's like when you finish the book, that was actually the most anticlimactic moment. I remember finishing my first book and I was like, okay, I'm done. And it's like, I remember sitting in a Starbucks and I was like, you know, like when you're recording an album and you finish it, I mean, I've been there, you know, having friends who are musicians and everybody high fives each other and they'll go out for dinner and the producer and whoever, you know, on the other side of the glass will be like, good job, everyone. You know, when you finish a movie, same thing. Everyone's, that's a wrap, you know, great. Like I just like finished the most challenging thing I ever did in my life. And I was like, just closed my laptop and sent an email to my editor and basically said, okay, I'm done. Here's the file. And like went on with my life the next day. I was like, being a writer is so depressing. This is why all writers are fucked in the head. We have to go through all the like hardships that other creative people go through and get none of the reward.
You don't
and then
get that end. Like I was like, yeah, we did it.
Right. Yeah. There's no like, I was like, well, I'm done. I guess tomorrow I'm going to go back to all the things I've been putting off because I've been writing this book and that's that.
I'm going to go do some chores next.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, well, I guess I'm done.
All right. So
anyway, okay, that's my,
well, and the reason I want to hit on that is like something I think is super cool about your story from what I know about your story is you wanted to be a writer and you are a writer, right? And you kept creating. You found a way to bring that creative flame throughout everything that you've done. But now you've had the chance, you've gotten to a position in your career where you're like, oh, I actually can focus on this now. So I want to work our way back to that. Let's go all the way back to when you were aspiring to be a writer and you're this person who's like taking the train into the city. You're you go to university, you're taking, you know, classes afterwards to focus on writing. How do you go from, I think I want to be a writer to starting a company that disrupts a long-standing industry that was kind of drenched in traditional tropes that were not progressive? You created something that and you can tell me, I don't think you woke up one day and said, I'm going to disrupt an industry and change this whole thing.
Not at all.
But you went from, I'm going to be a writer to starting this business that really changed a very big segment of business. So tell us.
I'm going to cry. Thank you.
Well, tell us, what was the strike point? How did it start?
Okay. How did it start? All right. We're going to go way back. First of all, I do remember when I was in high school taking some of these after school writing classes. And you know what? I wish I remember the name of the teacher, but I don't remember the name of the teacher. I remember going to this writing workshop. It was called the Gotham Writers Workshop. It was in New York City. And like I said, I found an ad for it on like a telephone pole. I was definitely the only person in high school in the class. I mean, everybody in the class was like in their 30s, probably like in New York, like trying to get writing jobs and agents and stuff. I don't know. And I remember the teacher like was very like little girl, like, what are you doing here? And of course, me being an obnoxious high school person was like, I know everything. I'm not a little girl, you know? And then I remember like, and he was like a published poet, actually, what I really wanted to be.
So you wanted to be a poet?
I wanted to be a poet, actually, before in high school and even some of college. I really was obsessed with my horrible poetry. And I remember like I was like, this guy is like my hero because he like was a full-time poet who probably lived in a very shitty apartment in New York and had to teach these shitty classes to supplement the income, whatever. But he had books you could buy at Barnes & Noble's full of poetry. And I remember I was like, I really, really like, how did you do it? Like, I would talk to him and like, you're my hero. Like, how can I do this when I grow up? And he was like, don't. And I was like, no, but this is what I want and this is what I love. And everything I do from here on out, I want to just like be a step towards me having a book of poetry in Barnes & Noble's like you. And he said, well, the best way to be a writer is not to focus on writing at all. It's to focus on living, because writing is living. And the more life experience you have, the more that you'll be able to write about. So don't like not go to college. Don't quit your life to go like, you know, because I also too in high school was like obsessed with like Jack Kerouac and all the like beat writers who basically just quit everything in their lives to like go on the road and do drugs and write. And I was like, that's what I want to do too. And he was kind of like, I mean, even though my dad would have never allowed that, but like I pretended I like, you know, didn't have to listen to anything my parents said, but whatever. But I kind of had to. Right. Anyway, but he said like, don't stop everything in your life, you know, to be a writer. That's not what being a writer is. You know, you need to learn and gain experience and see things and meet people. And that's what will make you a good writer more than anything. And I mean, it's like been like, I don't know, 700 years later, I still remember that statement. And I remember I looked at everything very differently after that, like as opposed to just like sitting down and trying to be like obsessed with my own kind of narcissistic thoughts, you know, getting like, because writing can be like that, where you're just writing about your feelings and your depression and this and that. I was like, I don't know. And as opposed to being like, you know, I was in high school, I was, you know, depressed, whatever. As opposed to being like hating the world, coming from that point of view. Like, I hate everyone. I hate people. I hate the world. I kind of was like, people are funny and quirky and interesting and fascinating. And it made me want to like get to know more about the world and more about people, because it was all more like material for me to write. So and then, you know, obviously I started kind of growing up. I mean, we're literally going back to me being in high school. And I really respect that, because every person who wants to interview me is like, how did you get in the porn industry? And doesn't really want to think about the person I was before that. So I think from that point forward, for better or for worse, I just put myself in any ridiculous situation. I became the yes man to any friend, like whatever it was. Like if anyone had just like a ridiculous suggestion, I was like, let's do it. Let's do it. Because everything was just like an experience.
And so everything was going to funnel up to writing. And like getting back in their experience.
Yeah. And I just kind of became a person who was like willing to pretty much do anything and everything, whether that was a drug, go to a party I didn't want to go to, or I don't know. Everything was just another like experience, you know, and I enjoyed, yeah.
I'm real interested in this because there's two things
that. This is so not where I thought this interview was going to go.
Because there's two things that are attached to that. One is you also stayed on track and did serious school, like real deal, like actual like school. So you went out and had like the whole lifestyle. And like you're just like, I'll say yes, I'll try all these different things, because you're trying to feed up into, I need the experiences, I need to really live to be able to really write.
Yeah.
And you still did school, and you also came up in the punk scene.
Yes.
So before we go into
they all kind of happen simultaneously.
Yeah, like let's talk about like your entry into punk and how that kind of fed into this as well.
Yeah. Entry into punk. I mean, aren't you like kind of just born punk if you're punk? But I think but then you have to enter.
But who gave you your first record? What was your first show? How did you get into it?
Yeah, and look, I was the oldest in my family, so I didn't have like a cool older brother, older sister to like introduce me to things. And you know, back in the day, we're talking like 30 years ago,
it's like
you had to find out about it.
Yes,
it wasn't.
That's what I want to know.
Yeah, you had to really search. Yeah. And as a girl growing up in a upper middle class neighborhood in New Jersey, it wasn't easy to do. Okay,
right. Yeah.
It's like the world was like, all right, you can just be a really nice girl, and you're like, no, I don't want to be a nice girl. Okay, so I'm gonna say like dating. I mean, when I was really young, like we want to talk about when I was like 10 years old. I remember this was actually when my family first moved to New Jersey from Massachusetts. And my dad, oh my God, I am telling my whole life story here. My dad got a very big, exciting new job. You know, we went from being like a more working class family in Lowell, Massachusetts. I don't think I've ever said where I actually grew up before. So I grew up in Lowell, Massachusetts. I lived there till I was 10. And then my dad, was still in school and whatever. And then we wound up moving to New Jersey, which at the time I didn't realize, oh, this is because my dad now got a really good job. I was like, all right, we're moving to New Jersey. Anyway, part of the reason I say this is because when we moved to New Jersey, we got to have something that I didn't have in Lowell, Massachusetts, and that was cable TV, something we couldn't afford when I was younger.
Which was a big deal back then.
A huge deal. And so I was 10 years old. We moved to New Jersey, and I just remember, and I had a TV in my room. That was a really big deal.
Oh, so something
I never had.
You were a very fancy person. Yeah.
And I remember discovering MTV.
Hell yeah.
And I would not stop watching it. And, moving to New Jersey, I left all my friends in Massachusetts. It was kind of, you're 10 years old, you're awkward, you don't really know who you are. I would watch MTV all day. And I know everybody's going to watch this and think lame, but MTV in what year I'm talking about, 1990, was super cool.
Super cool.
Yeah. And I remember watching Beavis and Butthead, and you'd see all the weird videos on Beavis and Butthead, and I was just drawn to them. And I would remember the names of the videos that Beavis and Butthead would more make fun of, because there were always punk videos on there. Right. They loved all the metal stuff, but then they would make fun of when a punk band would come on, or The Cure, or they'd be like, what the hell is this? And I would remember the names of the videos. I would write them down, and then I'd go to Sam Goody and I would just look them up. It's kind of when I just first started realizing I was into music that wasn't on the radio. I think that was the earliest that it started, and having the resource of going into New York City. I would literally in high school go to find record stores. I just got into things that were weird, but people, but were still not that hard to find out about. I started watching 120 Minutes, I would watch Headbangers Ball. I don't know, I would just get really excited. And I was and that was sort of the tail end of the hair metal scene. And I would get so excited and put on lipstick and tease my hair and rock out in my room to Motley Crue videos and stuff like that. Anyway, yeah, I started kind of just getting into music in general. So that's sort of the beginning. And then it sort of parlayed into being kind of goth, but I was so young, I didn't have a scene to do these things in. It was just me alone in my room, going to Tower Records and having my dad drop me off there. Or if I ever could, once I became 14, 15, going into the city, going to what was it called? It was Kim's. It was a record store that I would always go to. I don't know. I was just kind of I became really obsessed with 9 Inch Nails. That was probably the first band I started to neurotically just get obsessed with and want to know everything about. I had Trent Reznor poster in my room, and I started to get into Nirvana, which I think really admittedly, I loved everything Nirvana was about more than I actually liked the Nirvana music. I think, I don't know, got into all the Riot Girl stuff because from Nirvana I learned about Hole, and then I don't know, whatever. I was just kind of discovering music, and then I was just kind of weird, there was no scene for me to align my weirdness with. I was just wearing black nail polish and I don't know, just buying ripped up t-shirts and whatever I could kind of just get my hands on to show the world I was kind of weird. God, who actually broke me in?
Well, I want to hit on something because thematically I'm seeing something that's similar to your writing, which is you're a young person, you're into writing, you're into creativity, and you are finding classes to take on your own. You're finding classes in the city, you're doing it. Same with music. It's nobody was giving it to you. You're literally taking notes, which is, I have to say, that is I had a notebook when I was a kid where I was oh, that band or that record.
Remember they'd only say the name of the band at the end of the video,
totally.
Really quickly,
I had notes that I would carry that if I went to my friend's house and I heard something, I'd write it down because I hate to say this because for anyone who's young, who's grew up with the internet,
they're gonna have no idea what we're talking about. Yeah,
this was part of the hunt, was finding out about bands.
I know,
Spencer, you do not know what we're talking about, but thematically, what I'm seeing something is if you had an intellectual curiosity or a creative curiosity, you didn't wait for someone to serve it up to you on a platter. You went out and found it on your own, and you were very comfortable just doing it on your own. Like, I'm going to go do that. I'm going to go find that. So there's like a strong, independent kind of like self-discovery streak in all of your creative outlets.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So how'd you get your first show?
Okay. I'm trying to think of where I actually, who broke me in. There was like a few key people. I would go to the mall, being in New Jersey, and in front of like the mall, there were all these like punks and goth that hung out there. And, I'd be going to the mall with my mom, and I would just kind of look at everyone and be like, wow, I wish I could like hang out with these people. Like, and then I just remember one day I told as opposed to like going to the mall with my mom, I was like, Mom, can you drop me off at the mall? And
respect, it's the move.
Yeah. And I walked around and I just kind of like hung out near the punk rockers at the mall, like kind of waiting for someone to like talk to me. And one girl started talking to me, and I just remember being like, what? Like, what's going on here? Also, like, I knew that punk like existed because at that time, I do remember very recently at that time seeing Rancid on 120 Minutes. And I was like a life-changing moment. I was like, oh, okay. And then I just went and like, got whatever Rancid CD, I could find, which at the time was.
Can I speak on Rancid for a second? Mm-hmm. The importance of Rancid, I think culturally everyone understands the importance of Rancid, but like legit punks, like actual punks who were in a massively popular band that sold like, I believe like multi-platinum records and still stayed totally punk.
I know. Yeah. I mean, I found out about them on MTV, but where else was I going to find out about anything at that time,
You know the New York band Sick of It All?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Well,
I'm not a poser.
Listen. I'm sorry.
They were in the first Burning Angel movie. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Not having. Yeah. Anyway,
they're hanging out. They're being interviewed. Okay, so if I go to Sick of It All, when they put out Blood, Sweat, and No Tears, they got shit on because their like records were going to be in major chain stores,
right?
And people are like, "You guys are sellouts," blah blah blah. And they're like, "Well, wait, if this music is all about like changing people's minds, giving them alternative points of view,
they need to find it,
right?" And there's this like super amazing radio, like college radio interview between Sick of It All and this other band called I'll leave them out of it. I don't want to make anyone look bad, but they had this like incredible argument about like, you guys have like barcodes on your records, you're sellouts. And they're like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, they're like, people can find them.
Well, and then we flash forward to something like Rancid, where it's like, these are straight up, these guys are probably more punk than they were when they're young. They've put out these things that impacted me, impacted you, impacted everyone, because they were willing to forge a path of how to still be punk and do real deal business. Yeah.
Exactly. So after that, I remember being like, understanding like there is a difference between what I just, this Rancid music video and all the 9 Inch Nails, and the kind of weird grunge sub pop, whatever stuff that I like. I don't know. I remember I met this one girl at the mall and I got her number, and then she asked me if I wanted to go to a punk show, and I had to pretend that I already was going to them, and was like, oh yeah. Yeah, I was going to go to that one anyway. And but remind me the address again. And I can't. I wouldn't have my parents drop me off. I wound up becoming friends with someone else who said they were going to this same show, and like their parents like dropped us off. And I remember it was in this kid's backyard. His name was Craig. Shout out to Craig. Yeah, shout out to Craig. I actually remember the name of Craig's band.
What was Craig's band?
Oh my God. The band was called Example 24. If you guys are out there.
Example 24.
Changed my life.
Thank you. Example 24. That sounds like a low-key straight edge reference.
Right.
I mean, okay.
Yeah,
okay,
it's
okay.
definitely not straight edge.
How dare they?
I remember it was Craig's backyard. He had shows there. And I remember going there, and it was just like, this is, northern New Jersey, just like everyone, spiky mohawks, like jackets with, patches and paint on them, like I had never seen anything like that before. I was like, oh my God, this is like, we're all the weirdos, like commute and hang out and go, like I said, I was like a wandering lone weirdo,
So you found your people.
Yeah. I mean, granted, I stayed in a corner by myself most of the night, but I felt very comfortable there, more comfortable than when people actually spoke to me. And then I actually remember at that show, there was the Casualties played.
Hell yeah.
And I was like, whoa. Because it was almost like when, Craig's band was playing, there was like a handful of people, jumping around and whatever. But then when the Casualties played, and it was almost like people were like, oh, they're here, like the celebrities have arrived. And I was like, who are these people? And that was when suddenly like it went from like the typical mall people that I had seen to like very, very like people that looked like they walked out of the Rancid music video, very, very high, perfectly pink mohawks and Liberty spikes and, whatever. Anyway. And I just remember like seeing everybody dance and sing along and like, this is like a little shitty stage in a backyard and people grabbing the microphone and piling on each other and yelling the words. And I was just like, I fell in love with the punk scene, I was like, this is where I want to be,
Totally. And that, what you just said though, it's just some shitty stage in northern New Jersey.
I don't even think it was a stage. It was like
this is the power of people just saying, I'm going to do this. I'm going to have this band. I'm going to do this in my backyard. You're talking to me like about this, like this was like Madison Square Garden.
Yeah.
And you saw
and you know what? I've been to shows in Madison Square Garden and nothing will ever touch me the way that felt, the energy was unmatchable,
right. Well, and the reason I want to touch on this and why I think it's so important to your story, but also to a lot of the idea of business and leadership is the idea of like, hey, like it all starts with someone just willing to be like, oh, I'm going to do that thing and doing it and kind of figuring it out. And sometimes it's going to suck and nobody's going to care. Other times it's going to rule and nobody's going to care. But other times it's going to rule and it's going to change people's lives. And it all starts with people just saying, I'm just going to do this thing. So with that,
it does start from that. Yeah. Another reason I really hated living in Los Angeles, because it's very much a city where people talk about things and not much of a city where people actually do the things they talk about. And it drove me insane because ever since I was a little girl, every single thing I said I was going to do, I would actively go and do.
Yeah. So, well, it's that New Jersey in you. So
you can take the girl out of Jersey, but you can't take the Jersey out of the girl.
Respect.
That's what they say.
I got love for Jersey. All right. So with that in mind, that idea of someone just being like, yeah, I'm just going to do this improbable thing. Why wouldn't I do that?
Yeah.
Tell us about starting Burning Angel.
Fast forward till way later.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I was in my last ish year of college. I was very active, in my creative writing class. I lived in a house with like 6 other dudes, kind of like a punk-ish house. We had shows in the basement sometimes. And, it was like a scary moment in life because my whole life had been building up to like, I'm not going to follow the rules. I'm going to be a badass. Like, I'm not going to do what everybody else does. I don't want to like sit behind a desk and be a normal person. I'm going to be whatever, literally since I was young, it was like a promise to myself that I did not want to be part of normal society. But when you're in your last year of college, it's time to like put your money where your mouth is. Like, you're going to be like, well, what am I really going to do? Because this like bubble of being in college was about to burst. And I'm very grateful and thankful for my parents who did, they didn't spoil me, but they gave me financially, a little financial cushion of, paying my $300 a month rent and, giving me money for groceries and stuff. And where my money that I made at, working at Applebee's, just got to go to like cigarettes and I don't know, excess things youth, I couldn't put on my parents. Yes, exactly. And, my dad being he was a good father, he was like, well, Joanna, you're gonna have to cut you off. like you, eventually you need to pay your own rent, like really soon, and I was almost like, what am I going to do when I grow up? Like suddenly like reality was starting to kick in. It was time to actually like make the dreams happen. And so I wasn't really sure what the hell I was doing. However, also at that time, I was starting to like, I started to write a lot about sex, a strange and uncomfortable topic for me at the time. And, this was a different time. This was way before Sex in the City where it was, and being in that punk rock group, like all my friends were dudes. I didn't have this like cool group of girlfriends where I could like ask questions and talk about things, and as progressive as the punk scene was, like your sexuality was almost like, like you devoted that energy to like changing the world and being mad at the government and like, and going to protests and whatever. But like talking about like, sex and sexuality, it was very like not okay, and not accepted, and it wasn't supposed to be. But of course, I was growing up and so, and going through relationships and heartbreak and, and having to deal with, sleeping with people that really didn't want to speak to you afterwards and how to deal with those emotions, but supposed to also be this person that was supposed to act like they didn't care. And I don't know, I was kind of exploring myself and I didn't have anyone to like really talk about it with because I was like the cool girl in my group of dude friends. Anyway, so I'd write about it a lot in my writing class. And then I started to actually make my sex like writing kind of like humorous, because it was like a source of stress in my life, and confusion, which makes for good writing, Anyway, I would come home and read my roommates my weird sex stories from my writing class. I don't know why I did that, but I did. And my roommate was also my very best friend. We became very close. We had been roommates through a few different houses. I don't know. We just developed a very good like boy and girl friendship, I don't know what it was. From the moment we met, it kind of felt like we were related or something. It wasn't like a sexual thing. It just felt like a person I was comfortable around. Anyway, he was, of course, really into porn because he was a dude. And he
was a young man.
And I don't know. And I was always sharing with him my weird stories. He also was kind of like my best friend that would like talk me through all these like problems I had with like dudes, and like give me advice from a dude's point of view. And I don't know. He said that we should start a porn site. I don't know. I think he was kind of like, it's so hard to remember like what happened in what order, like talking about things that happened so long ago. In my last year of college, you were able to choose to get, do like an internship for college credit. And I wound up getting an internship at a magazine called Nerve Magazine. And it was like a very like sex positive, magazine. It was almost like a sex nerd type thing. And they had very like artsy ish, like nude photography, a lot of like funny dating columns. And they were actually like the first, because nerve.com was like just the online magazine, which is what I was particularly interested in. I started to like read it when I could. They wound up kind of being the first like dating site, because they had like a dating profile thing, which when I started to intern there, I realized was actually like what was the money in the company. Anyway, I started interning also for Nerve magazine, and I would go into the city like once or twice a week and just kind of help work on things there. So I was just kind of like learning a lot about this bizarre world of sex on kind of an intellectual level, which doesn't really make any sense.
It makes perfect sense when you're talking about your story, though,
yeah.
right? Like it's like intellectual curiosity. You'd go out independently
and I find it, yeah.
So when the idea came up to start a website, was it like, and like, oh, we should start a zine or we should start a band, or was it like, hey, here's a business idea? No,
it was exactly like what you said. It felt very much like we were talking about starting a zine or starting a band, or and that was that. And then I was like, yeah, let's do it. I didn't even think twice about it. I was just like, yeah. And like I said, from that moment in high school, I was down for any ridiculous adventure, and especially at that time, I started to like enjoy writing about sex and the trials and tribulations and things that were involved in it. And so I said, yeah, let's do it. And from that point on, we had to figure out how exactly to do it. We wound up launching April 20th, 2002. It was a good 6-7 months from the first moment we had this conversation until the website actually went up. I don't know. I just said, yeah, let's do it. And as I said, being my personality was like, the minute I say I'm going to do something, I just figure out exactly how to do it, and I do it. So just from that point on, I was like, okay. And I woke up the next day and I'm like, what do we have to do to start a porn site? And like, he kind of, took his side of things and I took my, and we both just sort of like, we just figured it out, it was very complicated. From figuring out how to put it all together. And it was very stressful too. So throughout this process, we were just like so ecstatic when something we tried to figure out actually happened, like he had like a friend or a friend of a friend that was like a programmer, and it was actually a friend that worked at like a merch, one of those like merch companies for bands. So he built websites, it was like the first like website where you could like order merch online. It was like game changing for the people in bands, because before that people could only sell merch at their shows, right, yeah. And so we were friends with somebody who worked for like the first and what I thought like the only like kind of merch website for bands. And so he was like, yeah, sure, I can help with this. But it wasn't like we hired it, like he was just like, all right, let me see if I can do this. And then there was like a friend of his wound up helping him because he realized it was a little more complicated than he thought. And then he told us, oh, you need to have a billing company. And then I was like, oh, okay. Like things you just don't know. We didn't know how you make a credit card, like appear, like accept that. Me and Mitch sort of divided it just like from that point on, it's almost like our business partnership was forming, where I was kind of trying to like figure out like the more creative things. And he was like working on like how to get like bank approval and how to like, he was like working very much with the programmers and like the friends who were doing us a favor. By,
totally. Can I give something I bounce against it. This is like, as you're telling me this, it's like, anyone listening who has ever started a record label is like, oh, I like this band. I'm going to put out the record. The band says, awesome, that's great. And the person goes, yeah. So like, what do I do?
Yeah, exactly.
And then you're like talking to a friend. Very
much that.
Who's like, my designer friend who could do the layout?
Right.
Like, oh, I need someone to master a record.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, it has to be distributed somewhere. Yeah, right. Things you don't know. These are things you take for granted.
So you enter though, like an old school. And the reason I brought up the record label is like, if we think of something like Discord, it's like, okay, music industry, like obviously classic, huge, like forever in this huge industry. Some kids in DC were just like, yeah, let's just put out a record.
Right.
And they figure it out. Your version of that is we've got this adult industry that's like old school. It's drenched in traditionalism. It's all this. And you don't say, there's no, oh, we can't do this. It's just like, oh, of course we can do it. Let's just figure it out.
Yeah. And I knew nothing about the porn industry, nothing at all. And he knew nothing about the porn industry other than being a fan of it.
Right.
We did not know. And this was before Twitter. This was before even MySpace or Facebook or anything. There was not this like very easily accessible world where you could figure out anything and everything about porn stars. So yeah, I started working on whatever I could, like I was trying to help with like finding girls who would actually do it. Trying to, in my own way, like style and whatever the photo shoots we did. There was no video either. We were just trying to find naked photos of girls, which is so crazy that back then it was like such a big deal. I feel like everyone is naked on the internet now. And so kind of putting together these like creative aspects of the shoot. Also very much like almost like trying to make like a weird like marketing plan, trying to like work with the person making the logo and what the logo should work with. I also, because it was my thing, decided that we should have like a section on the website for writing, so I was like working on my own, like this was my big thing, like my figuring out like which of my stories for my creative writing class were going to be on the launch of the website. We also, from the beginning, decided there should be band interviews in addition to like naked pictures of girls. So I was trying to find bands to interview and like coordinate those interviews and like, I don't know. I was just kind of trying to figure out whatever I could do that had to do with like the marketing and the brand, even though I didn't even really know what those terms were at that time. And then I remember trying to find girls to do it, which at the time, like, how did I even like, can you just imagine somebody's like walking around a college campus with a digital camera that they borrowed from like a friend of a friend's mom, living in a house with like 8 guys? Like if anybody approaches you like this, like say no, And I'm just like, do you want to be on my porn site that wasn't up? And really didn't pay a lot of money. And it was going to be money I made at Applebee's. Like it was I had so much excitement and confidence about that. Nowhere did it even cross my mind that I sounded like the sketchiest person on the planet. And I tried just like asking like basically the most like promiscuous friends that I had, and they would be like, no. And I was like, I can't believe that. They like have sex with everyone and they don't want to be like naked on this website. And then I just kind of going through friends and friends of friends, and I started to feel weird because I originally had no intention of being on the website, not because I had anything against it. I didn't think of myself as a hot girl. Right. I was like, no one would want to see me naked, like I didn't even think about it, And then after like asking girl after girl after girl to be on it and them saying no. And then I actually remember one girl was like, well, did you do it? And I remember feeling very like hypocritical that I said no. I'm like, how could I ask girls to do something that I haven't done myself? So then I remember actually going to Mitch and being like, I want to be on the website. He was like, what? Because we had this very like brother-sister like relationship, and I mean, this is like a guy that like, I don't know, in a weird way, like helped me grow up. Like I remember the first time I was like, he was there when I like lost my virginity, kind of like Joanna, go for it. When I met someone, I met Mitch when I was 18. I lost my virginity at 19, which is pretty crazy. It's very old. Anyway, and so this was like, our relationship was not like, you're a hot girl. You know what I mean? I was almost like his dude friend, or like his awkward little sister or something. Anyway, I was like, I'm going to be on the website. I was like, it's really hypocritical of me like asking girls. And I was like, whatever, I'll just like be on it when we launch. And then like, I don't have to be on it, just kind of like to get the ball rolling. And he was like, okay. So it's very funny when people are like, Joanna, what was like, how did you get into porn? What was your first shoot like? I'm like, my first shoot was Mitch taking this digital camera that came from a friend of a friend's mom, going into my bedroom in the house that we lived in while a million other things are going on in the house, you know? And he was like, all right, I guess I'm going to take these pictures. And we were like, yeah. And then like, I was like putting on lipstick, trying to like look through whatever I had. I actually remember because I was interning at Nerve at that time. I do remember being in the city and I stopped at some like fancy looking like lingerie store and bought like one cute thing. I didn't own any pretty line. I was like, all right, this is what I'm going to wear for my photo shoot. And, yeah, and that was my first shoot. We just went in the room, did the thing, and then that was that. And then I looked at the pictures, and I liked it. I had fun. Anyway.
Just like Burning Angel started essentially like two friends being like, oh, let's just do this. And your first output, like creative output, was in a bedroom. We could juxtapose that to Amazon starting in someone's parents' garage,
right? Or was it? Didn't Apple start in like a garage or something?
Apple started in a garage. I think Amazon started in a garage as well.
Yeah.
Again, getting to this idea that like industry disrupting businesses, things that like really change the world. When people are like, oh, but we got to do this or that. When people ask me for business advice, one of the things they say is like, don't look at competitors. Like, don't try and like build a business model off what other people are doing. Just start your thing and you will figure it out as you go along. And either your thing is going to be terrible and fail, or it will be awesome and no one will care.
Because you don't have any data until you start. Once you have data, you can work with that data.
All right, so let's talk about data, because I love just the like, hey, like we're just figuring it out, because that's the story.
Yeah.
But from when the data launched, did you realize, oh no, this is an actual business rather than just our fun thing we're doing?
Yes, and this is a story I have told in a few other places. The day it launched, April 20th, 2002. And this was after 6-7 months of like trying to find this and trying to find that and trying to get, like a very difficult, bumpy road of this actually being up. And it was up and I was so proud, I was so proud and kind of forgot that this was porn. Like, like this is a thing that like offends people. That was just so like pushed. It's like I forgot, Anyway, April 20th, 2002, there was a big party at my house. Like I said, I lived in a house with like 8 dudes, and there was a show going on in the basement that day. I was not the one that like put on the show. It was my roommate. He was the one who would get like bands. It was like his thing. He actually went on later in life to like put on very big shows and places, whatever. So the party was not like a launch party for Burning Angel. Like they were just both coincidentally happening on the same day at the same time. And we had actually hired, somebody went to a big punk show, a surf and skate fest actually in Asbury Park. I remember like we made like flyers for Burning Angel and somebody went to surf and skate fest and handed out the flyers. That was our big promotional launch. These orange flyers, I still have some of them. And they basically said band interviews, articles, because I guess I had other like sex articles. It said band interviews, articles, ... and naked girls. And there was like a weird, like kind of discolored-ish like picture of me. Anyway, and they were just handed out at this festival. Anyway, so that was going on in Asbury Park while I'm in New Brunswick, at a party. And there was a show in my basement. And I actually remember very well that a band, there was a band playing that, and they had a female singer, and she actually did sing a lot about like, abuse and, whatever. This was like that was, and it was very like always very inspiring, every time I was a fan of this band. And her strength to always kind of talk about her, her trauma in their music. I thought it was beautiful. Anyway, they were playing, and before she went on stage, before she walked to the microphone in my basement or whatever, before they started playing, she was like, said a whole speech about porn and violence towards women and like exploiting women and how it's wrong. And I was like, is this coincidental? Is she talking to me? Like, was she just going to talk about this anyways? Because I had seen this band play a lot, and she had never brought up porn. Right. She would talk about, rape, domestic abuse, very like sensitive topics, and being a survivor and stuff that was very like empowering to hear. But this was the first time I ever heard her basically blame a lot of those things on porn. And it was very uncomfortable for me. I was like, is she talking to me? And the whole room is like looking at me, and I was like, what the fuck is going on? Also, it was 420 and there were vegan pot brownies that were made. So these moments were like exemplified by,
as happens in such a time. Okay.
Yeah. But maybe the wrong day to eat like multiple pot brownies. And I was like, what the hell's going on? And does she even like know she's in my basement? I don't think she even knew I lived there. Cause like I said, this was a basement. And my friend was kind of the one that whatever. That was weird. And then I just remember like walking through the party and everybody is like cornering me and they're just like, oh my God, like, are you in porn now? Like people literally asking me. I mean, this was a very like politically active like punk scene that we were in New Jersey. Like, do you think that porn is feminist? Do you think that porn is punk? Like, what does punk have to do with porn? And like, oh my God. So like, do you think that everybody's asking me all these questions about like feminism and porn and punk and like asking me what the porn industry is like? I'm like, I went in my room and took pictures. Like, I don't know what to, and this is like, I was like, I didn't go anywhere. I don't even know anything. I didn't even know there was a real big industry. And I just remember, like, trying to find Mitch, and then I was like, what did we do? I was like, and he was like, it's cool. And I remember he was actually pretty fucked up from the party. Of course, he's the dude. So nobody's giving him shit about it. Mitch was also like, just a very like kind of quiet person. So people, I don't know. He was just kind of like laughing, like, oh no, it's fine. Just chill. And I was like, I can't chill right now. And I remember like going up to my room. I lived on the top floor. It was like a 4-story house. And I just like, I shut the door. I was like panicking and I was like, what the fuck did I do? What did I do? Yeah. And then I just kind of like realized I was like, well, whether I just did a good thing or a bad thing, this is a really powerful thing. Mm-hmm. I also came from many years in college, I was very like politically active, going to like protests, being in part of the like vegan scene, constantly like trying to like get people to sign petitions and stuff. And a lot of times I'd be standing in the student union trying to get people to like sign petitions about actually very important world travesties, trying to like free political prisoners in different countries that weren't supposed to be there, like real big problems. And most of the time people just walked by you and didn't care. You put a few naked pictures on the internet and everybody wants to stop and look at what you're doing and they care, know? And I just kind of realized that pornography, which I barely could even call what I did at that moment pornography, was really powerful. And I was like, yeah, I either need to take this website down and move and never speak of this again, or I need to make this the most amazing, thing that ever happened. And I need to really use this to make a difference. I had 2 options then. And that was that. It's kind of like from that moment, like I never looked back, and it was just nothing but like every single day of my life was like, what can I do to make this thing bigger? What can I do to make this thing better? And yeah, and I had no shame in what I was doing. And I knew that I did nothing wrong. And I knew that as an awkward kind of sexual person trying to find themselves, I found a part of myself when I first took those photos awkwardly in the room with my best friend. Like I wanted to like explore that. And I knew that I could help other women, or I don't even like to use the word help. It's like patronizing, like inspire other women who maybe were shy and strange to do the same thing and realize that you could be angry and you could be punk rock and you can be beautiful at the same time, you know? Like, it's almost like in the punk scene, it was very like, you were either a slut who sucked everyone's dick, or you were one of the boys. And I think I couldn't really, it's like I wanted to be both, you know? I really like wanted to like have fun. I was also like, you know, young and horny and attracted to all these, you know, a lot of people around me. But then I would have to like hide that, you know, be like, no, I'm not, you know, like I'm not like one of those girls. I'm like one of the, you know, so I kind of went back and forth from like, am I a slut or am I one of the dudes? And like, this was like, you can be both, you know, and like also just being that person, like I loved punk rock so much and I respect it. God, I was like the number one like cheerleader, not a groupie. Like if I wanted to have sex with someone in a band, it was because I was attracted to them and I respected them and I liked them, not because like I was like a girl on the stage that like didn't know their music and wanted to fuck them, you know. I was always cheerleading for men around me. That was my life, you know, being like, yes, I love this band, wearing their t-shirt, going to all their shows, traveling, taking my mom's shitty, beat up Pontiac Bonneville and driving it from New Jersey to Michigan just to see a show that like 12 other people are at because I loved this band so much and believed in them, you know, and like doing whatever I could to help the passion of the men around me. And, you know, at a certain point, it was like, well, I can be something too. And I very much knew deep down inside that I was like, well, all my friends and all these, you know, people that I've been supporting through all the years, they will support me too. Unfortunately, a lot of them didn't, but some of them did. I never looked back from that moment. And I took it as far as I could go.
All right, so you have the night of reckoning. You know, the pop brownies have been eaten. The band has had their message. You've had the conversations. You're in your room and you're like, no, I'm going to take this path. I'm going to quadruple down on it. So from that night, when did it become like a real deal business rather than just the project you and your best friend started?
I mean, I treated it like a real business every single day.
I'd say maybe like, when did you start making your living off of it?
Right. I mean, that took several years, you know, which most people in the porn industry don't have. People get into porn for quick money. This was very not quick money. So, I mean, it took a couple of years. You know, I was also still trying to finish a couple school classes. I don't know. The next few years were like a whirlwind. And then at some point, there was another girl on the website that we shot, you know, we took photos of, and she worked as a stripper, and she was talking about like how well she did as a stripper. And I was like, oh my God. And not be, you know, also just kind of made sense. So I started working as a stripper because I was able to work less and make more money and have money to put into Burning Angel and have more time to focus on Burning Angel. So yeah, I was doing that for a while. Then at a certain point, you know, I was like, hey, if this is going to be a thing, we can't be like working in New Jersey, you know, because like I started to realize like we needed to be in like New York City. So I could do events, and it just kind of seemed like there was like growth for Burning Angel in New York City. I was also like finishing school. I mean, fast forward, you know, we moved to New York. Me and Mitch moved into a place together. We wound up getting like a loft in, Williamsburg, and half the loft was like built out to be like a Burning Angel office. So yeah, I guess when we actually started hiring, you know, and there was a while we had an employee, and I was still going to work at night to be a stripper, coming back and working in the Burning Angel office during the day. And it was like a crazy time, you know, but then, you know, and I was like thinking big, and like Burning Angel was not exactly making a shitload of money. So I was like supplementing things with my stripper money. Like that's how we built out the office and stuff like that. I think the real changing moment. So yeah, it started in New Jersey. We moved to New York, built out an office. I'm still dancing. But we have employees. We actually managed to get, because I knew when I was in college that you could get college credit for an intern. We had 2 interns. So we had 1 employee and like 2 interns like working in the office that was in the same loft. You know, we actually had like started to have like things going on. We had like update schedules. At some point, the New York Times caught wind of like, what the fuck is going on with this like girl in Brooklyn, like running this porn site, you know? And they did a story on me, and Burning Angel. And when it was happening, you know, the reporter came and they came to one of our shoots and they came to one of our parties and they, you know, and it didn't, you know, and the reporter was like a young guy who was close to my age. So it didn't feel intimidating when it was happening. And also, he did the story and then I didn't hear from him. Also, keep in mind, I was doing 10,000 things at that point in my life. I just remember getting a phone call and he was like, to the Burning Angel office. And they were like, we just want to let you know, like, the article's coming out tomorrow. And they had like a few like fact checking questions to ask me. And I was like, okay, just didn't really think of it. Just kind of kept doing my thing. And I actually remember I finished my stripper shift at 5 a.m., you know, because I was open till 4 a.m. and whatever. I remember walking out of the strip club at 5 o'clock in the morning and passing a newsstand, and the newspaper had just gotten on the newsstand. And I was like, oh my God. And then I opened up the paper and there was just like a whole story about Burning Angel. And I just like, I kind of started shaking. I was like, this is real now. I think that was like the first moment where I was like, this is real. And that day, I think everyone I ever met in my entire life was calling me, you know, people in my family. And actually there were, you know, of course, a lot of people in my family, including my parents. I mean, my parents still, that's a whole other episode, you know, like my parents still loved me and did support me, but they were a little upset and confused by this decision. And there were other people in the family that didn't want to talk to me anymore. Weddings I couldn't go to, caused weird stress between my dad and his own like family, between my mom, you know, like they were like it was almost like other members of the family were mad at my parents for not like being more mad at me or something. It caused a lot of stress. And then family members who I thought kind of disowned me were calling me to like congratulate me. It's like the New York Times, like sort of like, I was like, I thought you guys didn't like this. You only like it because the New York Times says it's okay, you know? And numbers wise, that was a giant jump. I actually remember the website crashed that day. We were not expecting this, you know, at all. I mean, a really good problem to have, but a problem we never had to deal with before. You know, Mitch was like on the phone, like furiously with like our like, you know, hosting company. We had to like pay for more hosting because like we had, you know, you pay, well, especially at that time, we were paying for like a certain amount of bandwidth that was based around the amount of traffic we were going to get, which was not a lot. And there was like a very big jump that particular day. So that was the moment and that was the day. And also even after that, I was like, I need to really like, I can't have another job anymore. And, you know, there was always that like, can I, you know, living in New York. And I was almost like, you know, I was like, that stripper money was a nice, cushion to have. And also like a nice, like resource to like have to fund things in the company that we couldn't really fund. And I think from that point on, I was like, okay, this is it. And I actually remember the next night going to work and like, you know, I don't even exactly remember what happened at work that night, but I just like walked out. I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. My number one priority is like this website. And and that was that. So I guess that had to be the moment where it was like, all right, this is like a business now. Yeah.
And I like what you said when I said when to become a business. You're like, I always treated it like a business.
I did always treat it like a business, but yeah.
And I guess the way that I would frame it up is like a business. The day you sell your first thing of whatever it is, you've got a business. Where I'm looking at it more as like, when did it become your income source? When did you start having employees? Because I want to follow back to that, but.
So I guess that was the moment. I can't remember what year the article came out. Oh, was it like 2005, 2006, something, 2005, I think.
And you launched in 2002?
Yeah.
So that's actually like, I think a pretty good growth in that time. Like
yeah.
That to me seems like.
A lot happened those first few years, like a lot, you know?
Well, I'd imagine a lot of it was also just like, what the hell are we doing? How do we figure it out?
Yeah.
So at what point did the greater industry become aware of you? And when they did, were they welcoming? Like, yeah, that's cool. Or were they like, who the hell are you?
I mean, like everything, I just waltzed right in, and I didn't care what they thought, you know? You know, another kind of life-changing event was the first time I went to an AVN convention. Once again, found out about it. A customer came into the strip club, and he worked at Vivid, you know, the biggest porn company in the world at that time. And I remember he was like here on business or something. And he was like, you know, just like a stripper, you know, giving him a lap dance. I'm like, so what do you do? Just what you ask everyone. He was like, oh, actually I work in the porn industry, you know, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, what, you know? And then I just remember like stopping like stripper mode, you know, to like go into it. And I was like, wait. And I was like, I have a porn site. And he was so like confused. Like you just have this like website for fun, like, you know what I mean? Like coming from someone who walked into an office with lots of employees in the, you know, that drove like a Bentley, well, maybe it wasn't a Bentley, like a Mercedes, you know, that worked around like the big money porn industry, especially at that time, was just like so like confused and enamored with the fact that there was this girl in her apartment, you know, trying to like work on a porn site with big dreams. And I just started asking him questions, you know, and he told me, he's like, you should really go to AVN. And I was like, what's that? I had never heard of it, didn't know anything about it. And then he was like, oh, it's this big like convention, and there's this award show and like blah, blah, blah. And he's like, I can get you a pass, you know, if you can get yourself to Vegas, I can like give you a free pass. And I was like, yeah, I want to go, you know, and I'm going to learn. And I think I don't remember what month that was in, but whatever, you know, I made the plans and, you know, got on a flight and, you know, me and Mitch actually went, we stayed at like a shitty hotel. And actually, because this was kind of like an expensive trip, this is before I quit my job, I wound up like dancing at night at a strip club in Vegas, you know, to try to like kind of pay for the expenses, you know, of this. And we like walked around, you know, I wore like a little Burning Angel t-shirt, and I just kind of like walked around seeing like if I could talk to anyone and everyone. And I was just like really blown away because I had never seen porn as like an industry, you know. I saw like giant, you know, trailers, all the girls, the famous stars in their fancy outfits with their lines of people like waiting to get their autograph. And I was really like, I was like fell in love at that moment. I was like, okay. I was like, this is like where we need to be. And at that time we didn't have video yet on the website. We were just a website still with naked pictures. And we were kind of at that point starting to be known as like the bad girl version of Suicide Girls, because we were like a little more, we were way lower production value with dirtier pictures and just a more janky website. We were like the punk rock. They were like the commercial punks, and we were like the real punks almost. You know, that was sort of what was going on. But we were obviously starting to be compared to one another. And I didn't like that, because when I looked at Suicide Girls, I didn't feel like we had anything in common with them at all. And then when I was looking at these porno companies, I was like, this is who I want to be compared to and aligned with. And so from that point on, I just remember being like, and I remember saying, I'm like, there's no tattooed girls here. You know, there's no punk rock girls here. Like, I want to, you know, be here, but do it my way. And then that's what I'm going to do. And so that gave me just like, all right, the goal is to get here, you know? And actually that year I had told the story when I won feature movie of the year this year. The convention, I had a badge too, because that, you know, now knowing as a company who had many booths and badges, like that was, you know, every company gets like, you know, it's not that hard to get an extra pass through a company or whatever. But the award show was like, exclusive, like invite only. It wasn't even open to fans back then. It became open to fans later. So you couldn't even buy a ticket to it if you wanted to. And I just remember everybody talking about the award show on Saturday night and just like hearing people talk about it. And I was like, I need to go to this award show. I need to go to this award show. And I had no way of getting in. And the friend who got me the pass, he was like super busy and I didn't want to bother him. He had done enough for me. I just kind of like walked around seeing if anyone needed a date to the award show. And somebody said yes. It's kind of funny because it's a person I'm like, friends with to this day. And he's like, I actually posted a photo from it that he had from that night. Anyway, it was like a friend of a friend. Like I asked someone and he's like, oh yeah, I have a friend who has no one to go with. So I was able to kind of go and like sit in the back, because these were people that worked at studios. They weren't like performers. They weren't like on stage or part of the show. And I just remember being like so blown away. I had no idea there were awards for porn movies. And like, it became my goal in life to just be able to get into the show. Yeah. And so it was a very surreal moment when, I think the next year or 2 years later, I was like a presenter at the show. And then many years later, in 2016, I was the host of the show and, won a whole bunch of awards and stuff. Anyway, that was another kind of very big changing moment where I was like, we need to make porn movies. Like enough with this bullshit where we're taking photos of girls and I'm getting all this shit and doing all this press and like I'm being alienated by family members. And a lot of my friends won't talk to me anymore because I'm in the porn industry and I'm not even in the porn industry. I just like took naked pictures in my room, Yeah. I'm like, at this point, let's like make porn. So from that moment, we started to make our first like DVD. And that first DVD was called BurningAngel.com, the movie. It was like my great idea of like, here's what happens when a website becomes a movie. Right. I don't think anyone really ever got. But we kept this sort of, Burning Angel was very much known for band interviews, or what it was. It was band interviews and photos of naked girls. Right. And so I had band interviews and porn. And in the very, very first Burning Angel movie, My Chemical Romance was in it. And I did like an interview with them. Lamb of God was in it. I think Kill Switch Engage was. I did a lot of interviews and some of them, because we didn't know what we were doing, didn't even churn out. And I remember we did one interview and the sound was off. And I'm really bad right now. I can't remember who made it to the final cut of the movie, but I remember interviewing all these bands, Sick of It All. I did an interview with, I don't think they made it to the movie because I think that was the one where the sound wasn't working. Whatever. I feel stupid right now. I can't remember, but I do. My Chemical Romance was in it.
Which is so
pretty
wild
funny. It was so crazy. These were friends of mine from Jersey.
They're friends of yours from Jersey. Yeah. And you both went on to do huge things.
Yeah. And that was also everything was happening simultaneously. When the first movie came out, that was kind of around the time when the New York Times article came out and everything was just sort of like starting to steamroll. Yeah. I think people were confused. I just kind of stormed right in. I don't know. I wound up pushing my way in to direct a movie for Hustler, but I made a splash, and porn responds to money very well. And people saw that like there was money to be in in what I was doing. Porn is always trying to look for the next thing, whatever the next thing is. And honestly, I had already made a bit of a name for myself. I didn't have a ton of pushback because I already laid enough groundwork to like be someone. Also, I didn't need that much from the industry, like I had my own company and my goal is to make my own company bigger. It's not like I was a solo girl trying to like get an agent and, and get, what I mean? Like I didn't need all that much from people, which I think helped people welcome me too. I wasn't like competing with anyone. I wasn't really asking people for very much. But I think people want to hear this story. Like when I first came to Porn Valley, I knocked on a bunch of doors and everyone said no. But like I had laid enough groundwork down so there wasn't many doors I really needed to knock on. You know what I mean? Like, and I like I said, people already started to see me as an asset. And people treated me with respect, and there were a lot of really wonderful people, and they were even like older men that worked behind a desk. And I do remember, I mean, I could say the names of them, but nobody will know who they are, like they served as like mentors to me. They told me what to do. And granted, these people were making a little bit of money off me because I was trying to get DVD distribution and this and that. And people were really helpful. And I have to say that, like, I think the porn industry was very good to me. And I know not everybody can say that, I had dipped my toes in other industries, and I think that people were pretty shitty, and I respect the fact that I really was in a position where I could have gotten eaten alive, and a lot of people helped me. Yeah. But part of the reason was the energy I was putting out there. I mean, I came in with a purpose, and like I said, I was already going to be an asset to people. And the fact that I didn't need that much from other people definitely helped the way I was able to like approach these meetings. But I approached this just like I approached everything else, in the early days when people tried to say it wasn't punk rock. I was like, yeah, it is. So, yeah. I don't know. And what else, like I didn't take no for an answer. I didn't have shame in what I was doing, and I was very confident, and I didn't really have many issues getting the things that I wanted, because the things that I wanted were already going to, getting a distro deal. Like they don't have to put up any money, like they have nothing to lose, and it's exciting and new for them. And I already had a name, and I already had some PR behind me. So it was just like a win-win situation for everyone.
All right. So I know in there, and I want to jump to selling Burning Angel.
Yeah.
So
20 years later.
But that's the story, right? So like, I know there's a move to California, you scale up the business, you have Real Deal, like you've got employees, you've got like, it's a business at this point, like a true business.
A business for many, many years. And we went from like, it took a year to put out our first movie, and then we signed a distro deal where we had to make 2 movies a month for many years, and things that were really difficult started to become clockwork. There were schedules that we had to adhere to. There were other people depending on us. There were cable deals and, a business. And of course, coming along with business, lawsuits and permit issues and fighting the city of California. That's a whole other, bullshit of business started to come in, the good and the bad, and money managing and taxes and blah, 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 blah. Yeah.
Well, but all of it is, it's part of the story of you get to the point where you've scaled up and you face the choice that a lot of people face, which is, do I sell, or do I keep doing my own thing? Or maybe even do I just shut it down? So when you got to the point where you decided to sell Burning Angel, what were the factors that led you there? And tell us about actually making the decision.
Well, I think in the very beginning of Burning Angel, I was very obsessed with like there wasn't much to run. There wasn't much to direct or produce. Because we weren't doing very much. So it was very important to me to get the brand out there. And I guess I had a dream of a very giant office of people where I was coming in every day and being like, you do this and you do this. And now we're going to do this. And, I wanted us to be like I would go into the Vivid office sometimes for meetings or, whatever. I had a radio show there for a hot minute. And I'd be like, this is what I want. I want us to be like the Vivid office, next door, but it's gonna be Burning Angel. And there's gonna be anarchy signs on the wall instead of clouds and stuff. I don't know. That was my dream. And that dream started to shift after I became very involved with the production of Burning Angel. I sort of found my home of what I cared about, working on the scripts, working on the movies, directing the movies, casting the talent, working with the makeup artists, the locations, and sort of just putting together the movies and getting excited about the release of them, and working with the editor and working with, just sort of really being involved in production. Sometimes the day-to-day businessy things, the meetings I had to go to and just, the wheeling and dealing, so to speak, the stuff that used to get me excited when something landed, yes, we did it. Oh, look, we got one. Was not getting me excited anymore. It was actually getting tedious, and I was starting to get almost like, kind of jealous of my other friends that were like directors that weren't putting up their own money for the movies. Like I had to, like it was becoming like a lot and stressful. It's like I'd get so excited about this project that I just finished and made. And then I had to deal with like stressing of how to recoup the money that you just put out for that project. You know what I mean? And I was like, I want to just focus on I started to realize all the things I loved about what I was doing. I did not need to own the business to do anymore. It had been 20 years. I had changed a lot as a person. Also like every single dollar I made was like kind of going back into the business. And I'm not saying I was living like, terribly. I was fortunate, I'm living in an apartment, or like when I did live in like a slightly nicer house, I had to use that as a business expense. So we were shooting in the house. There was like never a moment of like privacy. My life was just like this 24/7. Phone could never turn off. I missed family weddings, family vacations, it affected like a lot of friendships and relationships in life, which didn't bother me for, 17 of the 20 years. But like at a certain point, it was like, it would be nice to actually, not be working 24/7. I mean, that's what you do when you own a business. And I was like, and I think I can do the things I want to do without owning this. And, part of me was like, I'm not a mogul, I'm not like a Mark Cuban. I'm not like a money driven like person. And, I don't know. I knew I wanted to sell, how to make that happen. I didn't really know. So I kind of just like put like feelers out there and then an offer did come. It happened to come from like at a certain point, we could not handle the web. Like I said, when the website crashed in the New York Times, that there were many more crashes that came after that. I remember our old programmer basically said at some point that your web code is like taped together with a bunch of Band-Aids and like soon it's going to fall apart. It's almost like we didn't really have the money to like make, that technology, it was like advancing really fast too. I mean, we went from like people waiting 10 minutes to download one photo to like a few years later, it was like if you had to wait 5 seconds for a video to buffer, people are just going to cancel their memberships. And it's like we couldn't keep up. And we stopped doing the web developing in-house. And, another company kind of took that on. And that other company was a big company. And so they were the ones that did the purchase of the company. And it made sense. I mean, they already had their hands in it anyway. So it just kind of went from them doing the web developing, design, credit card processing to them just kind of owning the brand. So, and they gave me an offer one day when I sort of like put it out there. I think I put it out there not really thinking anyone would bite, and then they did. When they gave me an offer, at first I was like, no, because, it was hard. And of course, all my friends that never ran a business were like, don't take it. That's your passion. That's your baby. You should don't sell it, but any one of my friends that did sell a business, and particularly the other peers that I had that sold businesses in the adult industry. And actually I got some inside info, knowing what other companies sold for. And I particularly remember from a very reliable source, a reliable source is the person who bought another company. He told me confidentially what he purchased that company for. And they were a much bigger company than Burning Angel. And what he purchased that said company for was pretty close to the amount that I was getting offered at that moment. And that was just kind of a moment where I was like, we're not going to get a better offer than this. Yeah. We're not going to get a better offer than this. And if I say no to this, they're not going to come back. I did not want the end of my story to be that we went out of business. I didn't want the end of the story to be, that we had to like go from being like, I always presented us as much bigger than we were. And that was getting harder and harder to do as like free porn became a thing. And like, I just kind of, it's almost like I did as much as I could do on my own and I needed some help, I was getting kind of tired, and I don't know. I just knew if I turn this down, this is not going to come back. And there's Burning Angel has reached its point. It can't go up. The best it could do is stay the same, but realistically it could go down, and I didn't want to see us go down. So I took the offer. And it was a tough moment. Part of me, I felt like I don't talk about this. I felt like a part of me died, Like I felt like it was hard. Like it was like, for 20 years, this wasn't just my... Oh, wow, I never talked about it. For 20 years, this wasn't just my business or my job. It was my life. It was my entire persona. It was my personality, It was everything. And I didn't want to be a sellout. Nobody likes to sell out.
Right.
And no one felt bad for me because I just made so much money.
Oh, poor you. You just did so well for
No one felt bad for me at all. So, not even my therapist. So, it was really hard. I didn't. And, I had to, let go of a girl that was working for me, and she wasn't happy about it, and it was weird, it was like really, really weird. And I think I was like, I didn't know who I was. I was Joanna Angel, like I was Joanna who owned a business. It was part of my, and I went through a year of like feeling just so depressed and empty, and it really didn't help the fact that a lot of things were promised to me in the sale of the amount of control I would have over the company. Because as part of the sale, I got a deal to stay on as a director without ownership, for 2 years with a salary and stuff. And that excited me so much. Like I said, I thought it would be a dream to be able to direct without worrying about the finances. But they, look, if I ever had to give someone advice on selling a business, like, I think that's the deal everyone wants. And like, I wish I would have just cut it off, because working for the company and it not being my own, and the way they like kind of, molested it and like, I was sort of like, lied to about how much involvement I would have, or, the corporate lie where they're lying, but they're not lying. They leave out certain words, and, and I felt like the rug was sort of pulled out underneath me. And like the first time like marketing materials went out that, were worded in a way I would have never worded them, and presented in a way I would have never presented them. And it was like nails on a chalkboard to me. And I'd be like, hey, like, can you change this? Can you do this? And nobody would answer me, or they'd give me the runaround of like, oh, you have to talk to this person. You have to talk to this person. Oh, and like, kind of like this isn't your job anymore. But like, I didn't really know that. It wasn't like spelled out to me. And the conversations I had before the company sale, like, really made me feel like I was going to, I felt like I was going to be really involved. And maybe I just heard what I wanted to hear. Because I do remember when a lawyer looked over the contract, they were like, hey, just so you know, like, in here, like, you really have like no creative control anymore. Like, they could, whatever. I was like, oh, but they just have to say that, like, yeah. I didn't even, believe that. Also, like, that was like kind of the least important part of the contract. Like, the money and the negotiating of the sale was kind of the bigger issue. Totally. And anyway, and also I didn't realize that actually as part of this directing deal, which was not told to me at all, I thought I was going to be just like directing for Burning Angel full time, but it turned out I was actually directing for the company who bought us their other studios. They were having me direct for them because they were cutting down the production of Burning Angel and severely. Whatever. Anyway, it was very weird for me to go from feeling like a very powerful, creative mogul to somebody who got emailed a script of porn that was very stupid and not creative and devoid of anything interesting, and like forced to just hand that in and make it happen, which was not at all what I thought my job was going to be. And it made me feel like very empty inside. But whatever. At a certain point, I swallowed it, and I just kind of looked at it like, this is my 9-to-5 job, and it's cooler than most other people's 9-to-5 jobs. And I kind of wrote it out. And I told myself, in these 2 years of this deal where I have this other job, where I have this porn directing job, I need to find what I do next, because this is it. This is by the end of these 2 years, it's like I've almost overstayed my welcome in this industry now by 2 years. It's like the party was over and I was still there. So it became my goal to find something. And it only made sense for me to find something outside the industry. I mean, how do you go from like what I was doing to like another job in the, and that was very, very hard to find, people in the world don't take porn directors, producers, writers, they don't take porn people seriously. They think it's a joke, and I give so much credit and respect, and I'm very thankful because I took a shot in the dark and I applied for a job at Liquid Death, and they took me seriously, and I made a resume of my skills, and it was like a really great moment. I was like, look at all the things I've learned in the past 20 years. I've learned so much about marketing. I've learned so much about branding. I've learned so much about production. I've learned about writing, all the things I've had access to do from my journalism, from interviewing bands, and all the like articles I've written as a writer. And, porn has led me to do so many different things. And they took all those skills really seriously, and then and took a chance on me. And like, I'm really proud of everything I did, but I never want to own a business again.
Perfect. That is perfect. Okay. So as we're closing off, I'm going to ask you 3 questions.
Wow, I can't believe I really never got.
All right, 3 questions. They're going to get harder and harder and harder.
Okay.
Okay. Here we go. And they're going to be tight questions because they're very focused questions. 3 best, your favorite. They don't have to be the best historically, but your 3 favorite punk bands from New Jersey historically.
Oh my God. From New Jersey.
From New Jersey
From
specific.
New Jersey.
And they do you want to do Eastern Seaboard or do you want to do New Jersey?
From New Jersey. Does New York count as? Okay, well, the Bouncing Souls.
Okay.
I'm going to give the Bouncing Souls.
Shout out to the Bouncing Souls.
Shout out to the Bouncing Souls. Okay, from New Jersey. Oh my God, I feel okay. You know what? I'm going to give a shout out to my ex-boyfriend's band, because they really were my favorite band, and because I love the band so much is why I decided that the drummer should be the person I lost my virginity to. And I really love them, but they're not a band anymore, but they were called Worthless United, and I really thought they were like the best band from New Jersey in the whole world.
Worthless United.
Shout out to Worthless United. You were my favorite band, and that's that. You guys, I really loved seeing you guys. I'm like, let's see. Oh wait, the Misfits. The Misfits are from New Jersey. The Misfits. I forgot. The Misfits are from Long Island, New Jersey.
Oh, I was getting nervous there.
Yeah, the Misfits are from New Jersey. You kind of forget that they're from New Jersey, but they were not. It's like I had 2 lives in New Jersey. Yeah. Like in high school, it was part of the northern New Jersey scene, and then the New Brunswick scene was like a very big, burgeoning scene on its own. But, okay.
All right. Shout out to the Misfits.
And we have to give a special shout out to Craig from Example 24. Craig. I can't think of any. I can't actually remember any of the songs, but I remember the logo really clearly.
Yeah, Craig, we don't know where you are, but
we don't know where you are. And if there is an example 24 7-inch sitting around somewhere, maybe like in the used bin at Generation Records, I don't know.
I'm gonna get it,
but we have to get it because
example
it was the bridge that I needed to get into punk rock. Okay.
Question number 2.
This was a hard one.
This will be easier, but still pretty hard.
Okay. Anything
you want to hype up, and where can people find you?
People can find me on Instagram, just at Joanna Angel. That's where you can find me. Hype up. Go on Amazon, buy my books. They're available. They're there. I would suggest buy Club 42 on Amazon. Buy me. And buy Liquid Death. And yeah.
All right. And then again, shout out to Styx, the dude. We love you.
Shout out to Styx. Thank you, Styx.
Impeccable choice of hats.
Who may or may not have called me and been like, where are you? The past like 2 hours. So you should tell me. My boss.
Right. Final question. And it's the first one we started with. After 2 hours of talking, I want to give you you can hit it again. You can say the exact same thing. You can go somewhere else. Who are you and what do you do?
Oh, that's really beautiful. I'm Joanna Angel. That's it.
Okay, awesome. All right. Thank you so much for your time. This is a really cool interview, and I feel like we could talk for another 2 hours, and maybe we'll meet up again.
Maybe we'll meet up again. Yeah.
All right, everyone. We will see you in the outro. And Spencer, drop the beat. That was awesome. Thank you again, Joanna. For anyone listening, one of the things I'd encourage you here is whatever business you decide to start or whatever you want to explore as being a career or an artistic or creative outlet or just anything that you're excited or passionate about, there's gatekeepers, there's people who've been doing it, there's people who seemingly hold the reins. And that's true. Like, there are people that do that, but also everything is disrupted by people just deciding to do it. And Joanna is a great example of that. So whatever industry you're in, if you want to do something and make it happen, the best way to start is just to start. Go for it. Get your friends. Make something happen, and you'll be surprised at where it ends up. So with that, I'm your host, Aram Arslanian, and this is One Step Beyond. One step. One